So it will depend on how much the Tagwirei dollar power is infiltrated the grassroots. Which is what I was saying. The danger is that if you buy a car and give a Goodwill's Massimirengwa $200,000 and say, support me in 2027 for the candidature, you don't know what the structures are thinking. So, but I still feel that when you put the two people together in terms of his political integrity, provenance, and grassroots, I think Chiwenga is stronger. But when it comes to funding and public relations and branding, KT is ahead of him. So this is what makes the politics of 2025.
So we can conclude that it remains so unclear.
Absolutely.
And we have to wait in terms of how it unfolds.
Absolutely.
Yeah, fair and fine. Yeah. Let's go about, we have partly touched on the dossier that was tabled by the Vice President during a Politburo, and we said, he should have gone to the police station or to ZAC to file a report against this individual that he had labeled as Gananda.
Right.
But I want you to maybe just elaborate briefly in terms of what does it mean when you've got a dossier being tabled in a Politburo before the president by a vice president?
We, unlike Temba Melissa, I take those things very seriously. Because when a president takes a document, the vice president takes a document and say, goodness me, all along I've always had suspicions that these guys were making noise around ED, that and that and that and that and that and that. I think, and one of them, who is Tagwirei, is being banded around as a potential successor, and is being pushed into the Harare province or into the provincial structures. I think it's an agenda that required serious attention in the Politburo, because Politburo and Central Committee take decisions for ZANU PF, right? So himself, as a very intelligent military person and with a lot of experience in politics, I'm talking about Chiwenga, he read that document and thought that it was credible. That's what my assumption is. So by taking it to Politburo, I've got a strong feeling that if those members of the Politburo were men and women of integrity, they would have said, okay, perhaps it's not on the agenda, but let's create a time to talk about it. Because when it comes to 2028, we don't want our party to be associated with the individuals that have been associated with corruption and all that, But we only hear Costa by hearsay that Mnangagwa and people like Muchangwa dismissed it and said, we want to know who the author is. Because even at law, if you accuse somebody of corruption, you must be able to prove it. Remember the Eddie Cross thing when he mentioned in some interview that Mnangagwa's children were corrupt. So Mnangagwa said, okay, fine. If you know them, if you know what they've done, can you bring some evidence that they are corrupt? And we look at it. And if they are corrupt and they've done something, then they can be prosecuted. Right? So that should apply as well. If Mnangagwa was carrying a dossier, which I suppose that is a dossier that was credible, because these things are constructed by individuals that know these individuals. Because even the Zimbabweans know, they've always been suspicious of how these guys make their money.
But what is important then is, after that incident, there was the United General Assembly in the United Nations, and there was, my understanding that Zimbabwe was also campaigning to have a membership in the Secret Council.
Very critical information.
But then the president didn't attend. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, when you and I know that Emerson Mnangagwa jumps into the plane at the nearest opportunity to attend anything, from climate change to women's menstrual issues and so forth, things that he's not supporting to be going there. So the United Nations, Assembly, the United Nations, UNGA, is a critical element of global politics. And no African president worth his salt must miss out an opportunity to go and talk on behalf of Africa. So there was no excuse whatsoever for Mnangagwa to bank this meeting. However, then the speculation then comes that the meeting came at a time when there was such a delicate, discourse around the issues of ascension and politics and ZANU PF and so forth, and he felt this is hearsay, he felt very unsafe and insecure to leave Zimbabwe at that time. Well, you and I can only speculate. But from my side, from an analysis side, I'm simply saying there was no genuine reason enough for him to miss out on that meeting. It is a meeting that he has attended, that even his predecessor used to attend. And the mere fact that we're talking about Africa having a permanent seat or some sort in Zimbabwe. Mm-hmm. The best person to talk up on behalf of Zimbabwe in the United Nations is Emmerson Mnangagwa. And if he missed that opportunity, it must have been very, very necessary for him. It must have been to do with insecurity, anxiety, or something else, which we don't know. But then we can start running our analytical, theory.
But as an analyst, how do you see this institution? Does Zimbabwe, is it worth it to just attend? I remember at some point, even the former president, the late Mr. Robert Mugabe, would say, we coming in here, year in, year out, but we are not really seeing the benefits for us.
Right, poor good old Mugabe, may the Lord rest his soul. Did he say that about SADC? Did he say that about AU? Did he say that about non-aligned movement? So we know that these global institutions are limited in the way, but when they take resolutions, look at whenever the United Nations makes a resolution about Gaza and Israel, the world shakes. So when it comes to implementation, they might not be as effective as regional bodies, but I believe that they are still important because they still maintain this. It's a very diplomatic process. So they still maintain a semblance of global order. So I don't know what other analysts would say, but I would say to myself, even if the United Nations is ineffectual, which sometimes it is, but it's a necessary entity to have to manage global politics. And that is why even Trump himself takes it seriously by always threatening to withdraw funding from UN agencies because he understands their effectiveness. But of course, it's those that control the United Nations are the ones that put the most of the money. But still, at the end of the day, we would have loved the president of Zimbabwe to go there and represent Zimbabwe, and not worry much about internal party politics, because internal party politics will always remain.
Mm-hmm. But let's also talk about something. The $230 US. This is now the welfare of civil servants. The strike by lecturers. We saw one group at the University of Zimbabwe which could have potentially influenced maybe other instructors from other universities.
Right.
What is your appreciation of their cause, universities, lecturers being...
Do you know, Costas, you're right. Yeah. Because one thing that, despite his own shortcomings, Mugabe was credited with, appreciating and understanding the importance of tertiary education. So he was an academic. So he used to take some of these things seriously. I'm not quite kind of sure what were the salary scales during the time that Mugabe was in power. But I suppose lecturers were generally very comfortable. So when you get lecturers of a big international university that is very popular in Africa, being on strike for 6 or 7 months, and students writing, examinations without supervision, on the basis of that, the university lecturers are not happy. It's a serious thing. It then we come back to the issue of philanthropy. That if these so-called supporters of ED, moneyed supporters of ED, are really serious about participating and influencing development economics in Zimbabwe, instead of giving away $100,000 to women who dance their butts away, why not actually get together a consortium of business and say, guys, we want our institution to recover its image to be the best institution in Africa. Let's listen to what the lecturers are saying. Let's talk to the chancellor. Who is who? Emmerson Mnangagwa is the chancellor. Let's speak to the vice chancellor. Let's put our money together. Let's resource this institution. That to me shows seriousness. But for lecturers to go on strike for six or 7 months, and they are not arguing for big salaries. They are simply saying, can you restore our salaries back to what they were before, $2,000, whatever, which is still peanuts though. And you don't take it seriously. Some of them you threaten them, some of them you kidnap them, and some of them you arrest them. I think it shows how the state of mind of the current government when it comes to tertiary education. It is very unfortunate, and I think it should be corrected sooner rather than later. It's a tragedy, really. Yeah.
You're a parent. You could potentially having a child at the University of Zimbabwe. What implication does that have in terms of the quality of education services being offered to students there?
In fact, you ask as if you are a prophet, and our son is at a stage where he was deciding which university to go to, and I was saying to him, why don't we support a local university? No, but you can even see that these guys have been strike for 6 months. What facilities are there? So you can see already even our children are raising questions in terms of the quality of education that is coming from there. You kept 5,000 graduates from UZ, from Great Zimbabwe Northern, but some of them are unemployable. Why? Not because of their fault, but because the institution, the infrastructure, the setup is not conducive. There's no motivation. So as far as I'm concerned, I think the government was supposed to put, especially the Minister of Higher Education, they were supposed to put this as a number one priority for 2025 to ensure that when we go to the next semesters in 2026, things have been resolved. So it just shows that this government is really not serious about tertiary education. All they say is very tentative. They speak in glowing terms. And to make matters worse, Costa, the president of the country is the chancellor of the university, and his subordinates are complaining about poor salaries and poor service conditions. Is not attending to them, and is sending in the military and the police to deal with him. I think this is tragic, really, and I think President Mnangagwa should hang his head in shame. He's not an academic, but even if you're not an academic, I've lived in African countries where countries were being run by non-academics like Daniel Arap Moi, but the University of Nairobi was very respectable, So really, I'm afraid it's going to negatively, permanently dent the image of UZ in the eyes of the global academic community.
Yeah, but I just wanted us to contextualize it, because I don't think it's the University of Zimbabwe issue alone. I think it's a trending. It goes beyond all other state universities. This should be the standard where lecturers are earning such. But what is the direction? What is the future of tertiary education in this country, given that we were expecting to have graduates who can create employments, because we have got an industry that can't absorb those graduates. We don't have industries that can absorb, potentially we then need a revitalized education system that create employers who can then be, but when we got this such a kind of circumstances that we are facing, what is then the future of tertiary education and our graduates?
Exactly, because the universities are supposed to be the last frontier of technological innovation. They are the hub. Now, right now, the world is talking about AI, but AI is generated by investment in infrastructure in universities, research and R&D and so forth. So if that is now lacking, purely on the basis that the lecturers that are in our tertiary institutions are not motivated, because their working conditions are pathetic, their salaries are paltry, it is like I'm saying, Costa, it's going to take about 10 years to recover from this damage. So, and in the depth of my heart, I'm saying perhaps, until there is a change of government and a change of mentality, this thing cannot be resolved. In the first place, it is unfortunate that a head of state can be a chancellor of all universities. He is not going to have enough time to invest in understanding the challenges that are bedeviling the higher education.
What is your proposal?
Yeah, each university should have its own independently appointed chancellor, where the constituencies, the stakeholders can participate in selecting that chancellor on the basis of their competence and their ability to attract support.
How will that solve the wages, the welfare issues?
It solves the welfare issues because suddenly the board has got an independent chancellor who has got an independent board who can be able to moderate and even look for strategic partnerships globally in terms of raising standards of living. University lecturers are not civil servants. No, they are not.
But vice chancellors, what would stop them from engaging those international bodies to source for funds?
It's a good question, because the vice chancellors are appointed by the president, right? Remember, so this whole political patronage thing that we've been talking about is the one that is permeating even up to institutions. Do you know that, Costa, even in our university, there is no longer political activity, which stimulates the minds of young people. This is why we are suffering with a whole generation of bad leaders now. Because student activism has been totally destroyed. Why? Because those vice chancellors that are appointed on the basis of ZANU PF patronage cannot encourage student activism. We want political activism, we want social activism at campuses. But if the vice chancellor is appointed by a chancellor who is highly compromised in terms of his political ideology, he is not going to allow his subordinate at a tertiary level to instigate and allow political.
But what I wanted us maybe to just explore was how can that have a net effect on the welfare of the lecturers?
It can have, because why? Because if the chancellor is an independent entity who has been put in that position by the stakeholders on the basis of his or her competency and integrity, they are able to attract enough resources to sustain our lecturers. Because our lecturers are being sustained on the benevolence of government. The government should only be able to subsidize, but the chancellor and the vice chancellor and his board or her board are the ones that are supposed to be instigating infrastructural and administrative support, and that cannot happen if they are politically compromised, especially the vice chancellors. So it permeates not just to the welfare of the lecturers, but even to the quality of the education itself. So the whole thing revolves around too much interference by this government in institutions of government.
So in brief, if you're going to be given an opportunity to speak to the president about this, what are we going to say?
And in the first place, Costa, which part of the constitution says the president should be chancellor of universities? I don't know where this came from. I can't remember even seeing it in the constitution, because I would have said no, it can't be. So the first thing that I would say to the president is, can he disassociate himself as president from institution of higher learning? He has got enough problems to worry about at political level, at national level. So the tertiary institutions should be run by independent individuals that are nominated and selected by stakeholders within that community. So if I can persuade, the first thing that I really hope I could persuade him, if I had an opportunity, is to dissuade him from being associated with institutions of higher learning. He can influence his hand through budgetary support, rather than, even if it's just a figurehead. It's a wrong figurehead, because it's a political figurehead. So he should step out of that robe of being chancellor and allow public institutions to have independent chancellors who can be nominated and selected by stakeholders on the basis of their integrity and capacity to attract infrastructure support.
So I think we simply picked the lecturers maybe as an example.
Yeah, I know.
Because this is what every civil servant is facing in this country. I just wanted that to be clear to our viewers.
Yeah.
But let's make enough of that section. Let's go to the upsurge of accidents that we have witnessed this year, killing lots of people. And vis-a-vis the state of our roads, and also how strong our policies to deter that. We know the Chiwenga, South Africa bus, all that, just examples. But we have lost quite a number of people because of accidents in this country. What is your take, and what would you like to advise maybe policymakers, government itself, to make sure that the number of accidents, we are now getting into the festive season, what should be done? What are the measures that you propose as an analyst?
I'm always fascinated, Costa, when people put a correlation between state of the roads and the rising accident rates. And I think it's a very popular fallacy, but I suppose really the quality of driving depends on the policy environment. What sort of drivers are you allowing to handle public vehicles. If they are public vehicles, what are the inspection systems like? What does VID do? VID do to ensure that the buses are roadworthy? Even the mentality of the bus owners themselves. How much do they allow their drivers to operate on the road without giving them rest? So this problem is much bigger than the roads itself. Of course, the issue of the roads is very important, but Zimbabwe has always suffered from bad roads. I think the problem is that like we're going back again. 45 years after independence, we still don't have dual carriageways in main roads that connect that connect the business hubs. It reduces accidents, but it does not eliminate them, because when the driving mentality is bad, you are always going to get accidents. So I think we need to look at the whole policy environment about how are licenses issued, what is the policing like in terms of the traffic policing, what the bus companies, how do they manage their processes. So if you just assign a transport think tank to this whole thing, of course the state of the roads is going to come as part of the problems, because we are putting so much money into Zinara. So much money every month, each and every moment there is money, but the quality of our roads is not improving, especially in urban centers. So it affects also the quality of cars, and their mechanical sustainability. But most of the accidents, if you go through the statistics, the metrics of road accidents, Costa, there is very little to do with mechanical failure in road. Yeah, it's attitude.
It's the attitude.
Just the attitude. If you see the age group that is driving Shika right now, you can sense that there is the policy environment about changing the driving mentality and ensuring that public cars, vehicles are handled by mature people that are tested every year to ensure that they are in the right state of mind. I think we should be able to deal with this.
But it looks like they are not effectively, maybe perhaps if I can put it that way, if you are to see the chaos that reigns supreme in Harare, the combis, the shika-shikas, and so on. Do you think that they really don't have, like those who are the law enforcement agent, the traffic people, the council itself, do you think like they don't have power to just deal with that menace? Yeah.
It's a good question. I mean, okay, if you want to talk about driving chaos, Harare is nothing compared to Dar es Salaam or Lagos on a peak hour, or even Nairobi. Yeah. So the vehicular population is much higher in other African countries, because Harare is. I don't even think that they have more than 500,000 cars on the road at any one time. It's not possible, because it has to do with the size of our population. So if you want to talk about chaos on the roads, go to Dar es Salaam or to Nairobi or to Lagos. But you make a good point that our traffic management system is run by totally incompetent people. The mayor of Harare knows that traffic lights are not working, intersections are not clearly marked, there are no white markings, there are no street lights. He knows that. Right. The traffic safety board knows that the attitude of drivers, public passenger drivers, the attitude is very bad. The Minister of Transport knows that there is corruption happening in issues of transport of licenses in VID, but there's no political will to deal with the problem. So that's where the problem starts. That somebody should take responsibility. Harare City Council should take responsibility on the traffic system in Harare. The Minister of Transport should take responsibility on the way that licenses are issued and the syllabus, so that you once you have a person given a license, that person should be a person of integrity. There is a system that should be put in place. It doesn't happen in England. In London, there are more cars than Zimbabwe 10 times over, but we don't get these kind of things. The M1s and the N1s of the world, they are dual carriageways, but we get buses here overtaking in dual carriageways. So you can see that most of the problems that we have are systemic, and we should then identify the key institutions that are involved in the transport network, sit down and think of a strategic, solution to it. And I can tell you that attitudes are some of the Zimbabweans. We have a bad road attitude. It doesn't matter if you put 3 carriageways to Mutare right now. I mean, if you put 3 or 4 lanes from Harare to Mutare, you are still going to have accidents because we have a bad attitude. The VID does not give us a good attitude, but of course, also the age group of driving should be changed. So that for public cars, vehicles, we have sensible and mature drivers. But forget about this popular fallacy that the roads are bad, so that we have got accidents. It's nonsense. If you go to ZRP right now, to national statistics on road traffic accidents, it's mostly to do with driver attitude, drunken driving, overspeeding, overtaking on double, whatever. So it's an attitude problem. And any think tank can make a research and make a proposal on how to deal with this attitude problem to ensure that our roads are very safe.
So we are simply talking about the response from the law enforcement agents, because we continue to see these kinds of people back on the roads, still driving, the menace is still persisting. So
hundreds of police on the road.
Hundreds of police on the road and so on. But what I would also say in terms of the response, I will give you one example of the Chiwenga, where the truck spent some time stamping on top of the combi, and the people crying without any immediate help coming.
Even rescue services are not available. We were told that there were helicopters that can be installed. So, but it's all to do with attitude. In other words, do we even have enough resources to sustain an emergency situation on the roads? We don't. Look at our public health system. Does Harare City-Council, even Chiwenga City-Council, do they even have enough ambulances? We are told that the ambulances donated from Belarus, but we don't see them on the road. So most of the things that we're talking about, are very correct. That we have the wrong people in these institutions. Right, because if the police general commissioner of police, police commissioner, I don't know what they call him, if you are serious about putting a team together to ensure that enforcement is adhered to, we could not have any problems. Because why you can have about 20 roadblocks along Masvingo Road, but still we have got serious bus accidents. Why? Sometimes these guys pass through these police roadblocks overloaded. I've seen myself driving behind a combi with 2 guys hanging
on the back.
On the back.
And they pass through a police checkpoint.
Yes, and then the policeman stops me and says to me, "Ngwenya, you have got a cracked windscreen." And I'm like, "Get a life. You are looking at my cracked windows. It's not even interfering with my driving." But I've just seen those 2 guys passing, and he's saying to me, "No, though there's another section that can deal with them. We are only dealing with you because we are interested in your cracked windscreen." I'm like, I'm not going to pay any fine. So you can see the kind of mentality that we have even in enforcement. It needs to be changed. So the PGHQ should sit down with its team, the dispos all over the country, and say, "Listen, let's look at we have a problem. We are not enforcing these rules correctly." I think 3/4 of the public vehicles that we have on the road are not supposed to be on the road. Do they have VID certificates? We don't know. Are the drivers tested for their mental predisposition? We don't know. Do we even have breathalyzers? We don't know. So everything is just chaotic. And you're right, it's chaotic, but it's the system and the individuals that allows it. Yes.
Okay, fair enough. Let's talk also a bit about something that is very positive, the opening of the Trabablas interchange. We know the issues that surrounds it. The millions, the figure that it continuously changed. At some point it was 88 million, then it changed to 114 million, then I don't know the last figure, then it is suggested. But fair enough, we've got the Trabablas interchange. I drive through it, I think, this past weekend. And I must say it's a good infrastructure, and I think it has helped in terms of minimizing the traffic congestion. But what is your view in terms of the willingness to develop roads in this country, if we can have such kind of an infrastructure, and considering even the period that it took and the resources it took?
It's tragic. 45 years after independence, we are still talking about a Victoria Falls Road that is totally impassable. Right? I'm not a road engineer, by the way. I don't know much about the engineering works and all, but I'm very much excited about issues of roads, because even at local level, in my local authority, I even started a group that talks about road networks and so forth. So first of all, it is not true that Zimbabwe does not have money to invest in state-of-the-art in road networks. It's not true. Our country is very rich. It's only the priorities that are wrong, right? Yeah. So we have had enough time in the past 30 years to invest in road network, and we have not done that. We don't know where the money has been going to. And suddenly then, ZINARA was created, right, to manage the resources of road development. And nothing seems to be happening that we can tell. So the system that was there before was that ZINARA, the money was collected at local level. So the government did not have to worry about local roads because the local authorities were meant to deal with that. The DDF was meant to be dealing with roads in rural areas, right? So the national trunk was then the responsibility of the Minister of Transport. That formula was changed, and it was tragic in the sense that ZINARA started collecting millions and millions of dollars of money. And then we look at our disgusting political patronage system. That money was then deployed into political programs and disinvested from the road networks. And meanwhile, the local authorities are crying every day saying, please, let's restore the system that was in place so that we can then worry about ensuring that our roads at local level are made. But the government is not listening. Why? Because ZINARA is a cash cow. It's so much money that can be abused. We don't know what it is used for. To the best of our knowledge, even if you are going to be allocating devolving money to local authorities, say if you gave Rural Local Board $2 million for this coming financial year to fix their roads, they won't even be able to do 2 kilometers, right? Because it's much more expensive now. We have lost out of maintenance of the roads. We now have to scrape them off and redo them. It's $1 billion job, and we have billions and billions worth of resources that we can use. The countries that we know, like Dubai, Ivory Coast, South Africa, even Botswana uses one resource: diamonds. Francistown looks like a state of the art city now, because of their roads, of their networks. But they don't have lithium, they don't have copper, they don't. So you can see that we're coming back again to the issues of patronage and corruption. That a corrupt government cannot deploy resources to the benefit of its citizens. If our government redeployed the resources to ensure that our infrastructure, and basically by decommissioning ZINARA, we don't need ZINARA. We can have a private sector road agency that is funded by government, but ZINARA is not the right, because it's a political organization. So I think we need to redeploy our resources to ensure that at local level, local authorities are supposed to collecting resources to fix their roads. Rural areas, we've got the DDF, they can handle that. Trunks, then the central government can handle that. Yes.
Yeah, you brought a very important point in terms of the resources, how are they being managed. We also saw the enactment of the Broadcasting Services Amendment Act 2025, and with some particular controversial clauses, like it should be clause 15 or 16, yes, which then compels motorists to then first acquire ZBC license at $32.
It's amazing. How do we even manage to survive in such a system? This is mafia territory, I'm afraid. You know what? There's no relationship between a public broadcaster's license and vehicular insurance. It shows you that once a government is poisoned by power and authoritarian insanity, they can do anything. They shouldn't be. It's a law that even these parliamentarians, instead of talking about reducing the rates of ZBC, they should be challenging its legitimacy. It's totally illegitimate. It interferes with freedom of movement of citizens. So I think it's a bad law that requires, it must be retracted from the statutes and not just amended, but removed from the books.
Mm-hmm. But they are saying the institution, ZBC, is a public broadcaster. It needs resources.
Yeah, it needs resources, but there's more opportunities to create money from advertising. It should make itself so good and
self-sufficient.
Yeah, self-sufficient.
But it's a public.
Yeah, it's public. Public does not. I mean, it's already sustained. It's being sustained by taxpayers, Costa. So licenses, yes. When you buy a TV, we assume that you should have a license. But I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that what I'm refusing is to correlate a TV license and a motor vehicle license. That mortgaging of the two is wrong.
You don't have a problem with motorists being targeted alone.
Exactly. If I have got a car, it's my responsibility to buy a broadcaster's license. I know what to do. But if I have a car, I want to buy my license disc and cover my insurance. It has nothing to do with ZBC. These are two different sides.
And this is regardless of you whether you're enjoying the services or not.
It doesn't matter. I mean, as you're saying, it's a public. Because there's a villager somewhere who wants to know about AI, and I know that a private radio station cannot be in Shirogwe. So if that information can be passed through, like for instance, my project talks about title deeds, for everybody. So it's a national program, and I would like to fund it, but I can't because it's a big program. So if the government, which is responsible for protecting property rights in this country, can fund this program and talk about title deeds, it's good. So, but you cannot compel somebody to buy a radio license on the basis of having to buy a motor vehicle license. That's what I'm saying. It's wrong.
We can spend a day talking about the highlights of the year, but I want you to lastly touch on the donations of vehicles to the military personnel.
Yes.
I know we heard that they were going to receive more than 700, and so far what was provided was something around 102 to military personnel.
Yeah.
What do you make of such a move?
Look, Costa, there is nothing wrong in a democracy for an individual to donate for a good cause, right? But my problem is that when an individual donates to the army, it does not amount to CSR or philanthropy.
Corporate social responsibility.
Yes, it's simply trying to influence the dynamics, the political dynamics. Because remember, the National Army of Zimbabwe and the ruling party have links. They've been linked. Yes, yeah. So to me, if an individual is saying, I'm going to give $1 billion to the National Army, it's a wrong way of going about. I would rather have an individual going to build maybe schools in the army barracks or clinics, or taking children to school of soldiers that can't afford. But then pampering the generals with this sort of vehicles and money, it seems to me the ultimate objective is to influence the way their attitude towards you, and it is wrong. It's your money, we know, but it is wrong. Focus on the institutional deficit. This is, there's not enough food in the army. Probably there are not enough clinics. The teachers that teach in army schools and police schools are not well paid. So focus on that. That focus is okay. This thing of publicity of donating 700, because we don't know which part of the army they are going to. They are probably going to end up with a couple of favorite generals and corporals, which is bad. I think it's a bad way of making donations. It's not only wasteful, but it's actually disgusting. Yeah.
But don't you think they also need such for their work, for their mobility, and so on?
Yeah, but that's the job of the Minister of Defense. If the Minister of Defense has
so you would prefer a situation where the resources go to the Minister of Defense,
exactly,
and then the Minister of Defense does the rest of the
because they know where the need is. Right now, in my local authority, we probably don't have a car at the local police station.
But do you think maybe it could be done without the consultation from the Minister of Defense?
Well, I mean, with donations. I mean, if any private company can be free to donate to a public institution, but I'm saying because the Ministry of Defense and the PGHQ know what the deficit, what the areas of need are in ZRP and the Zimbabwe National Army. So rather than saying I'm going to buy 600 cars and give them to you, maybe they don't need cars. Maybe the army mess needs to be redone. Maybe the army hospital needs to be redone. Maybe the army golf club or golf house needs to be redone. So it's better to take the money and say to the Minister of Defense, we are making a donation of $10 million to the army so that you deploy these resources as you see your need. rather than pitching up there with 1,000 units of Starlink and 700 units of rafters. I think it's a way of trying to influence decisions in the political decisions. And this is why I'm saying that it's very suspicious, and it's not philanthropy. Yeah.
What is your latest comment on the recent succession that we have seen with the ZDF and Zimbabwe National Army, the new changes?
Yes, our constitution is very clear how the army changes hands and so forth, and the Defense Act. But we always get confused when somebody who is older than the other one, who is being retired, is put in place.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I'm saying that if somebody has reached a retiring age, they should be retired, right? And you put a younger person in
taking over.
Taking over, yeah. But if you are removing somebody who is 7 and putting somebody who is 72, it means that the objective of retirement, to the best of my knowledge, I thought that you put an army general, a commander who is younger, who is more educated, who is more motivated, so that the army assumes a level of 21st century, operational efficiency. It's not a political thing. It's military competence. So imagine there's the number of young people that are in the army that are capable of taking over that position. So to the best of my knowledge, it seems to me it's part of the succession dynamics that we've been talking about. And
how is that linked?
It's linked because, remember, I've said to you that we've always been told that there is a link between the ruling party and the military. So there is absolutely no way.
I mean, this latest, how is it linked to succession politics?
No, in the sense that there are some people that are arguing that since the retiring of Chiwenga from the army, and he was made into a civilian, right? He was decommissioned from the army. It meant that now the person who is going to get into the army needs to be somebody who is politically accepted to the one that is supposed to be, succeeding, the current president. So that there is no confusion when the civilian president comes into power. He should be compatible with the individual that is within the army. This is why you asked me a question that why would somebody donate cars to the army? Yes, in a country where the civilian dictatorship is linked to the military, it means that there must be compatibility in terms of their ideology, in terms of their principles. So you're not going to put an army general who contradicts the political philosophy of the ruling party. So that is how it is linked, to the best of my knowledge. I think it's part of the succession dynamics that you have always been trying to persuade me to talk about. Yeah.
Comrade, when you have spoken at length, I want you to give our viewers your last words.
My last word is that this country, Costa, is crying for democracy. We need electoral reform. We need integrity in governance. We need our systems to be restored. We need our institutions to recover from patronage and state capture, so that when we even talk about 2028, it's okay. We must talk about 2028 because electoral politics is dynamic. But we want to approach 2028 with credible institutions so that the next generation of leaders in this country are elected on the basis of integrity and efficiency and proficiency.
There you have heard it from Comrade Joyce Ngwenya. We have shared his analysis in terms of the highlights of politics that we have witnessed in this country since the beginning of the year. Thus far, we can carry this discussion. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for continuing to support us. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Until next time, I'm signing out.